Hey guys, this is Mrs. Brigman, and today we're continuing on with this and proportional relationships. Before we begin lesson 7, I just want to say you guys are doing such a great job, and you have 3 more lessons in this unit to go, so keep it up. Today we're going to talk about something that could really help you out in your everyday life. This lesson is called percent of increase and decrease. And your essential question for this lesson is, how can I find the percent of change in a quantity? Have you ever heard someone say, man, gas prices have increased by 25%? Or maybe your parents came home one day and said, I am so disappointed, my salary has decreased by 5% from last year. Well, today we're going to talk about how you can figure out what these things mean. What is a percent of increase and decrease, and how can you find the changes in quantities? All right, let's start off with some vocabulary and find your guided notes for lesson 7. It's entitled Percent of Increase and Decrease. And your vocabulary word is percent of change. So simply fill in those 3 blanks in your guided notes, percent of change. And as you're writing that, just listen. A percent of change shows how much a quantity has increased or decreased in comparison with the original amount. Now, there is a formula that goes along with this topic, and you are going to need to memorize this formula, and I believe we have put a box around it because it is very important for you to memorize this formula when working with percent of increase or decrease. All right, to find percent of change, that is represented by the variable p, that is the percent of change, you are going to take the amount of increase or decrease. It depends on your original amount. Is it increasing or is it decreasing? The amount of increase or decrease, and you're going to divide it. Remember, this fraction bar means divided by. You're going to divide it by the original amount. So please fill out this formula in your notes, and this is going to be something that you want to memorize. The amount of increase or decrease divided by the original amount. All right, just a few more blanks to fill in below your formula. It says if the new amount is greater than the original amount, the percent of change is called a percent of increase. If the new amount is less than the original amount, the percent of change is called a percent of decrease. So this makes sense. If the number that you get is greater than the original number, you know it's going up, so it's an increase, a percent of increase. If the new amount that you get is lower than the original amount, you know that it's going down, so it's a percent of decrease. So this makes sense. Again, if the new amount is greater than the original, it's a percent of increase. If the new amount is less than the original, it's a percent of decrease. All right, let's try a few examples of finding a percent. And for our first example, you can see that our numbers, it says, what is the percent of increase from 8 to 13? So our original number is 8. And we're going up to 13. So this is going to be a percent of increase because we're going up from the original number. Now, it's very important that you always have your formula with you. The percent of increase is going to be equal to the amount of increase divided by the original amount. So let's fill in the things that we know. The amount of increase is going to be 13 minus 8 because the difference of these two numbers will tell us how much it increased from the original to the new amount. So do 13 minus 8, and we're going to divide it by the original amount, which is 8. 13 take away 8 is 5. We have 5 divided by 8. 5 divided by 8, this is a fraction, and we need it to be in the form of a percent. So to convert fractions to percents, you first need to convert it to a decimal, and you do that by dividing. And when you divide 5 divided by 8, you will get 0.625. And it's still not a percent yet, so we need to go ahead and move our decimal 2 places to the right. And so the answer is 62.5%. So from the original amount of 8 to the new amount of 13, the percent of increase is 62.5%. All right, let's try example number 2, and this is going to be a percent of decrease because you can see here is our original amount and it's decreasing to 35. So because the numbers are going down, it's going to be a percent of decrease. So going back to our formula, you always want to have the amount of increase or decrease, and in this case it's a decrease because it's going down in the numerator's position, and then we're going to divide it by that original amount. So let's get started. The amount of decrease, we find that by simply subtracting the two numbers, and that will give us 14. And we're going to divide it by the original amount, which was 49. And I'm going to reduce this fraction down. 14 divided by 7 is 2. 49 divided by 7 is 7. So this is equivalent to 2/7. And we need to find a percent. So we need to convert this fraction to a percent. And you're going to do 2 divided by 7 to get the decimal version, which is 0.286 converted as a decimal. And then we're going to move our decimal 2 places to the right, making the answer 28.6%. So your percent of decrease from the original number 49 to 35 is 28.6%. All right, for this example, it says find the percent of change as an increase or decrease and find the percent of change. It gives you the original amount and the new amount. So we can see the original amount is 16 and the new amount is 28. So this is for sure going to be a percent of increase that we are looking for. Now remember, our formula is the amount of increase, and that will always be divided by the original number. So our amount of increase can be found by simply subtracting these two numbers. So 28 minus 16, and we're going to divide it by that original amount of 16. 28 minus 16 is 12, and then of course we can reduce this fraction by 4. The fraction is 3/4. We need to find a percent of increase. So 3/4, we need to convert it to a decimal by dividing. You're going to do 3 divided by 4, making it 0.75. And of course we need a percent, so move your decimal over once, twice, and the answer is 75%. So your percent of increase equals 75%. All right, for example 4, let's try a real world example. This is using a percent of change. Let's first read the question together. It says, tacos. A taco company puts 24 taco shells in every box. Recently, the company expanded the box and put 25% more shells in each box. How many shells are in every box now? For our solution, let's first find the amount of increase, and we're going to find that by figuring out what is 25% of the original amount, which was 24. They originally put 24 taco shells in every box. So we can solve 25% of 24 by multiplying. And we've learned these types of problems before, but you simply want to move your decimal point back, and we are going to calculate 0.25 times 24, which is equal to 6. This number that we found is the amount of increase. This means they are going to increase each box by 6 tacos. Now, this is not our final answer. It says how many shells are in every box now. So to get this new amount, we're going to take the original amount, which was 24 tacos, and we're going to add it to the increase, which was 6, because 6 is 25% of 24. So we're going to add that to the original amount, and the new amount is now 30 tacos. Alright guys, now it is your turn to try some percent of change examples. Please remember your formula for these questions. You are going to be finding the percent of change, and the formula is the amount of increase or decrease divided by the original amount. So memorize this formula. The percent of change is the amount of increase or decrease divided by the original amount. And using this formula, you should be able to answer all of your turn questions. Try 1 and 2, and 3, 4, and 5. And your teacher will go over these with you tomorrow in class. Alright guys, that concludes today's lesson. Have a good evening.